In 1945, the United States emerged from the Second World War with unmatched industrial and military might. But looking across a ruined Europe, Washington realized it was entirely blind. The Red Army occupied half the continent, and American intelligence knew practically nothing about what Joseph Stalin was planning next. President Harry Truman had initially dismantled America's wartime spy networks, thinking the job was done. It didn't take long for him to realize the error. To survive the growing standoff, the country urgently needed a permanent, peacetime intelligence service. In 1947, the Central Intelligence Agency was born, with a mandate that was intentionally vague. They were instructed to gather intelligence and, when necessary, interfere directly in the affairs of foreign nations to protect American interests. Executing that mission required vast amounts of cash, but asking Congress for a massive, unclassified budget to fund covert operations would invite impossible questions. To counter the Soviet threat, the government had to construct a global apparatus entirely from scratch, and it had to run off the books. The solution was hidden in the fine print of the European recovery effort. While billions were officially earmarked for food shipments and infrastructure, a secret arrangement diverted 5% of the Marshall Plan's funds directly to the CIA. That gave the agency an untraceable war chest of nearly $700 million. Even with limitless funds, their early espionage efforts were disastrous. The agency tried dropping parachute teams and deep cover informants behind Soviet lines, but the KGB's networks ran circles around them. Missions failed consistently because American spy rings were thoroughly penetrated by double agents. Facing humiliating defeats in human intelligence, the agency pivoted. They needed a decisive victory to prove their worth to Washington, and they realized they could use their massive budget for brute force political sabotage. The target was Iran's democratically elected prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, who had recently nationalized the country's British-controlled oil fields. CIA operatives slipped into Tehran with over $1 million in covert funds. They didn't use sophisticated spycraft. Instead, they bought parliamentarians, paid editors to print fabricated stories, and handed out cash to street mobs to violently overwhelm Mossadegh's supporters. Mossadegh was captured within hours, and the oil fields fell back under Western influence. Washington celebrated the coup as a clean, decisive victory. By replacing actual intelligence gathering with orchestrated chaos and well-placed bribes, the agency had discovered a formula for toppling sovereign governments. During the Cold War, the CIA realized they would never outspy the KGB on the ground. To gain an actual advantage, they stopped playing Moscow's game and leaned heavily into America's core strength, building advanced technology. By partnering with aerospace engineers, the agency developed the U-2. It was essentially a jet-powered glider that could cruise at 70,000 feet, safely above the reach of Soviet radar and missiles. In a matter of months, American intelligence went from blind estimations of Soviet military strength to high-resolution, high-altitude omniscience. Yet, while the agency secured a pristine victory in the stratosphere, its operations on the ground were turning increasingly grim. In Vietnam, the agency expanded its proxy conflicts by running the Phoenix program, a brutal operation designed to tear apart enemy intelligence networks. In neighboring Laos, agency operatives turned a blind eye to local militias trafficking opium in exchange for military cooperation. The aggressive push for results led to severe ethical breaches. The agency experimented on unwitting citizens with psychological torture and LSD in the MK-Ultra project. Years later, to bypass congressional funding restrictions, they facilitated weapons sales and overlooked cocaine trafficking to arm contra-rebel groups in Central America. They even utilized BCCI, a corrupt global bank, to launder billions for their black market operations. Decades of prioritizing immediate anti-communist results over operational ethics allowed the CIA to build a massive, self-sustaining financial empire. But as investigative reporters and congressional committees began pulling threads, the full scope of these operations leaked out, shattering the public's trust in the agency. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and the red flag was lowered over the Kremlin. The agency had spent nearly half a century defining itself entirely by its rivalry with KGB. Without that enemy, the CIA suffered an identity crisis, facing budget cuts and closed overseas stations. The morning of September 11, 2001, violently ended that period of stagnation. The attacks thrust the agency back into the center of national security, but this time they were facing a decentralized, highly mobile network of extremists. Hunting this new adversary required another technological leap. The agency armed the U-2's eye in the sky concept, creating the modern drone program. Aircraft like the MQ-9 Reaper could loiter over a target for 24 hours, equipped with high-resolution cameras and Hellfire missiles. High-risk human operations gave way to remote precision. An operator in Nevada could track and eliminate a target across sovereign borders without ever setting foot in enemy territory. A decade of relentless drone surveillance and data collection eventually located the architect of the 9/11 attacks. The 2011 raid that killed Osama bin Laden served as the ultimate vindication for the agency's modern intelligence-gathering methods. However, eliminating a central figurehead did not neutralize the threat. Militant networks immediately splintered and decentralized further. To stop future attacks, the CIA realized they couldn't just react to intelligence. They had to predict exactly where and when the next cell would strike. The agency sought help from outside traditional defense contractors, forming a partnership with Silicon Valley investors and developers, including PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel. Guided by CEO Alex Karp, they built Palantir, a software platform designed to ingest mountains of global data and expose behavioral patterns that were completely invisible to human analysts. Looking at this diagram, we can see exactly how the platform operates. It continuously pulls disparate data points, phone call metadata, international bank wires, and live drone vectors, and instantly weaves them into a single living map. The software rapidly connects these isolated dots, illuminating hidden relationships to isolate a specific target. Data mastery is the new territory. Control of the global information architecture has superseded physical geography and mountainous terrain as the deciding factor in modern conflict. The bumbling human networks of 1947, funded by briefcases of diverted cash, have been replaced. Today's agency is an AI-powered global panopticon. Now, the agency faces an environment of maximum complexity. They are no longer fighting localized proxy wars, but competing directly against near-peer adversaries like China in areas of hypersonic weapons, quantum communications, and global data supremacy. The United States possesses an apparatus of staggering technological power. Yet, in an era where global systems are instantly interconnected, the margin for error is razor-thin. A single flawed algorithm or one undetected blind spot in the data could now set off a chain reaction that no agency can stop.